Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I will introduce you to one of the most demanding topics related to the rise of ESG in India and an overview. It's noteworthy that this concept made its way to India about a decade after its introduction in 1998 by John Elkington, co-founder of the business consultant Sustainability. In this presentation, I will discuss how the ESG concept has evolved within the Indian trade and commerce sector since 2009 onward. There is still a lot of confusion surrounding ESG implementation in India since its inception here in 2011. Uncertainty remains regarding the key players driving ESG adoption and how to operationalize it locally. While international ESG framework and rating agencies are marketing their Western-centric system here, my focus will be on promoting ESG specifically within the Indian industrial context. My goal is to refer ESG competency domestically across the Confederation of Indian Industry members and relevant government ministry to compete globally. Over this series, I will explore ESG component in Indian context under existing rules and regulation. This incorporates current environmental and social protection with corporate governance ethics for mandatory ESG disclosure. I believe it's important to share my observation and experience in implementing the ESG scheme in India. The intent is to bring clarity to the understanding of ESG in the Indian context. Subsequently, presentation will cover various aspects including the ESG framework, hierarchical setup, functional values, establishment of protocols, challenges of implementations and the integrations of institutions along with the option for certifying professionals and institutions. So stay tuned for an in-depth exploration of ESG and its relevance in Indian landscapes. Based on my experience, I find there has been substantial progress in integrating ESG principle into business operation, as provided from 2011 onwards. Thus, several challenges and problems need to be addressed for the effective implementation of ESG in India. Firstly, there is a substantial lack of awareness and education regarding ESG among business investors and the general public. Many companies remain unaware of the potential advantage of ESG integration and struggle to incorporate these principles into their strategies. Secondly, India's regulatory framework for ESG is still evolving. While efforts have been made to establish guidelines for ESG reporting and disclosure, the absence of comprehensive and standardized reporting framework leads to inconsistency and confusion for businesses. Thirdly, the quality of standardization of ESG data in India are often subpar, making it challenging for investors to accurately assess a company's sustainability efforts and make informed investment decisions. Fourthly, the prevalence of short-termism in Indian business driven by pressure to deliver immediate financial results often clash with the long-term perspective required for successful ESG investment. The relentless focus on quarterly earning can hinder the adoption of the sustainable practices. Fifthly, effective stakeholder engagement remains a significant hurdle. Companies struggle to engage transparently and meaningfully with a diversified range of stakeholders, including employees, local communities, and environmental groups. Resource constraints also impeded ESG efforts, especially among the small and medium-sized enterprises that lacks the resource and expertise to implement comprehensive ESG initiatives. Gender diversity is a persistent concern with the Indian companies struggling to achieve gender parity at the leadership level, which is a critical aspect of the social in ESG. Lastly, the managing supply chain risk related to ESG is another daunting challenge, particularly for companies with complex supply chain. Ensuring responsible sourcing and ethical supply chain practice required substantial efforts. And the last is enforcement and accountability mechanisms related to ESG in India are often weak, leading to limited consequences for non-compliance or unethical practice. Next is addressing economic inequality and poverty. Fundamental aspect of social in ESG proves challenging due to India's significant economic disparity. Another is additionally, while ESG investment products are gaining popularity, some financial institutions in India have yet to fully integrate ESG criteria into their investment decision, restricting capital flow to ESG-friendly companies. India's culture and regional diversity necessitate tailoring the ESG consideration to specific contexts and challenges in different regions. Next is related to the policy inconsistency and changes in the government regulation create uncertainty of business with ESG initiative, highlighting the need for consistency long-term policy. Next is India also grapple with the environmental challenges such as air and water pollution, deforestation and resource depletion, complicating efforts to meet the environmental ESG standard. The looming threat of the climatic change further exacerbates the situation, making it difficult for companies, especially those in high carbon emission sector, to align their practice with the climate-related ESG goals. Another is access to green and sustainable financial options remain limited for many Indian business, hindering their ability to invest in ESG projects and initiatives. Lastly, greenwashing, a practice where companies make false or exaggerated claims about their environmental and social efforts, misleads investors and consumers, eroding the credibility of genuine ESG initiatives. Overall, one can say that India's journey towards the effective ESG integration faces multifaceted challenges that requires concrete efforts from various stakeholders to promote sustainable and responsible business practice in the country. Today's presentation primary objective includes addressing the local industry needs through information, education and communication. Unlock insights that tailor to Indian business on ESG, addressing local challenges and opportunities, demystify ESG complexity, identify key components. The series of forthcoming presentation on ESG also aims to identify and define ESG element and develop an operational plan integrating certified professionals and relevant bodies, empowering program managers and policymakers to drive country-specific ESG investment. The overarching goal is to maintain a balance between the nature, human activities, that is social equality, and business equity, that is governance, ensuring with the holistic approach. One can conclude that the series of presentation will strive for balance in our planet, people and prosperity through nature, social equity and good governance practice in India. Here the set objectives are narrated broadly in the coming series of presentation related to the issue of ESG in India. So please be patient and listen to the series of ESG presentation which will cover various type of topics related to ESG in India. One of the key issue is related to the giving meaningful meaning for environmental, social, governance, that is ESG, to be defined for India. Let us take in 1998, John Elkington identified a novel cluster of non-financial consideration that should factor into a company's equity value encompassing non-commercial aspect related to the environmental, social, governance in the commercial entity. Subsequently, in 2006, ESG issues were officially introduced in United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment report, which include the Freshfield reports and Who Cares Win. This represented a pivotal moment as it marked the first instance where ESG criteria was integrated into the financial assessment of companies. ESG comprises a comprehensive set of standards utilized by the socially conscious investor. It entails evaluating a company's performance in environmental stewardship, scrutinizing social interaction with the stakeholders, and assessing the effectiveness of governance structure, including the leadership, executive compensation, audit practice, internal control, and the shareholder rights. The factors influencing environmental, social, and governance in India are multifaceted and can be broadly classified into four categories as external factors, internal factors, corporate governance practice, and government initiative. External factors globe events such as environmental disaster and social issues have underscored the impact of business activities on the planet and society, leading to recognition of the significance of ESG factors since the late 20th century. Trade agreement countries like EU often includes environmental and labor standard provision, encouraging Indian companies to adopt ESG practice. The availability of ESG rating agency in India and the pivotal role of industrial bodies like CII in actively promoting the ESG principle and guiding companies in implementing ESG practice cannot be overstated. Furthermore, India's participation in the global trade and investment means that international ESG standards and initiatives such as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the Global Reporting Framework have significant influence on the Indian business and industry. Another is related to internal factors. Growing environmental awareness about the climate change is increasingly recognized as a major threat in India. Climate risks such as air, water, noise pollution, and social concerns like poverty, inequality, and human rights issues are pressing challenges in India. Consumers and investors are becoming more sensitive to these issues and are seeking companies that contribute positively to society. These challenges are pushing companies to adopt environmentally sustainable practice to mitigate risk and comply with the regulation, leading to public demand for companies to operate sustainable and address environmental issues. Another is related to commercial, that is the corporate governance practice. Change in the board composition, audit process and executive compensation have encouraged companies to enhance their governance standard to align with the ESG principle. The growing interest of domestic and international investors in ESG compliance company has pushed Indian business to prioritize ESG factor for sustainable and social responsible investment, driving companies to improve their ESG performance. Investors, both domestic and international, have shown a growing interest in ESG factor when making investment decisions. This demand has driven companies to improve their ESG practice to attract investment. The upcoming ESG reporting strategy under the stakeholder capitalism approach have created value creation for business using the ESG framework. Overall, unconventional threats from climatic change, environmental challenges, and social awareness together have created the demand of integration of ESG factors into provocative business strategy. Last but not the least is related to the government initiatives. The government has launched several initiatives to promote ESG such as National Action Plan on Climate Change and the Green Energy Mission. Regulators like SEBI have introduced various guidelines and mandates around business responsibility reporting, ESG disclosure, and sustainable reporting for the companies. Government policies and regulation play a significant role in shaping ESG practice. India has introduced various policies and regulations related to environmental protection, labor law standard, corporate governance, and sustainable development. These regulations encourages companies to adopt ESG practice and disclose relevant information, thereby boosting ESG adoption. Increasing media coverage of environmental and social issues keep ESG principle in the public eye. These factors together have created a strong momentum of ESG in India, which is still evolving but holds significant potential for shaping a more sustainable and responsible business landscape. To grasp the concept of sustainability, it's essential to understand why it is so crucial. There are three key drivers underscore significance. Firstly, the world's population is growing exponentially. Secondly, there is a finite supply of non-renewable natural resources. Lastly, there is mounting pricing pressure on these non-renewable resources, which will significantly impact sustainable business practice. In simple terms, sustainability means thriving and evolving without depleting the natural resources needed for the future. Different entities define sustainability as per their specific need. The United Nations earlier definition in 1987 emphasized meeting current needs without jeopardizing future generation ability to meet their own. The three-pillar sustainability model comprises environmental sustainability, which underscores the importance of natural resources and biodiversity. Social sustainability focuses on social structure, well-being and harmony, vital aspects affected by poverty, wars and injustice. Economic sustainability highlights the capacity of economic to grow, especially crucial for the finance many sustainable initiatives. These are a set of standards for companies' operations that socially conscious investors use to screen potential investment or what equities or bonds are to be purchased from the company. As per national guidelines on economic and social environmental responsibility of business, sustainability has three main pillars: economic, environmental and social. These three pillars are informally referred to as people, planets and profit. These three principles are interconnected, driven by their core principles and are increasingly practiced in India. Organizations that embrace all three principles simultaneously contribute to creating a sustainable future with responsibility. Overall, in the broadest sense, sustainability refers to the ability to maintain or support a process continuously over time. In business and policy context, sustainability seeks to prevent the depletion of natural or physical resources so that they will remain available for long term. The outcome is achieved by balancing the social, environmental and economic impacts of business. It is the process that ensures that business goals are pursued without compromising any of the three elements. Owing to my previous explanation, let us do a comparative analysis of ESG versus SDG versus CSR. The Republic of India, since its independence, had a revolutionary history of industrial development till date. Though it is justifiable with all parameters, remarkable interdependence is found in the approaches associated with ESG, SDG and CSR. The early movement was on the right-based approach that largely focused on the relation to human rights into consideration and implementation of the development of the industrial growth. A right-based approach develops the capacity of duty bearers to meet their obligations and encourages rights holders to claim their rights. Government have three levels of obligation. First, to respect, protect and fulfill every right. To respect the right meaning refraining from interfering with the enjoyment of the right. Human rights is a common parameter of both social and welfare approach and largely revolves around the participation, accountability, non-discrimination and equality, empowerment and legality. Looking at the growth in business profit margin, the trigger of welfare-based approach for a workforce engaged in the development of entity demand for a better living condition. The welfare approach deals with the issue related to inequality, injustice. The approach grew up as a reaction to the quantitative and model building traditions of 1960. This approach looks at the human being as beneficiary or target of all development activities. The approach argues for higher government expenditure on health, education, social secondary, and amenities. People are not participants in the development but also a passive recipient. However, modern welfare approach is based on the principles of equality of opportunity, equitable distribution of wealth, and public responsibility for those unable to avail themselves of the minimal provision of a good life. Sustainability is a holistic approach that considers ecological, social, and economic dimension, recognizing that all must be considered together to find the lasting prosperity, while the egalitarian belief in or is based on the principle that our people are equal and deserve equal rights and opportunities, or a person who advocate or support the principles of equality for people Thus, the concept of business with the responsibility emerges with the total commitment of corporate sector. When these approaches materialize, demands for the people, profit and the planet become the utmost necessary to evaluate through metrics using 17 sustainable goals with 169 targets and 306 national indicators to be monitored for our country's performance towards the environmental, social, with the governance pattern observed in all commercial entity. Based on my previous discussion, let us explore more about the triangular integration model. The triangular interlinked approach of sustainability play a crucial role for Republic of India, where CSR, SDGs and ESG parameters have meaningful relation with each other. Based on my over 2 decade experience of working with the environment and social sector, I believe that likewise CSR has evolved into ESG, that is, CSR aims to make a business accountable, ESG criteria make its efforts measurable. ESG provides a data that can be analyzed showing the true picture of the company's sustainability and then act upon. Further, the management of ESG issue has moved from a niche area that sat in the compliance of CSR department of companies to a core strategic priority embedded throughout the organization. Companies are not only focusing on the sustainability of their ESG and operational process and policy, but are increasingly exploring the positive impact of their product on society and the degree to which these products are directly helping achieve societal objective. While CSR is generally understood as being the way through which a company achieves a balance of economic, environmental and social imperatives, while at the same time addressing the expectations of the shareholders and stakeholders. These align with the SDGs, which are a collection of 17 interlinked objectives designed to serve as shared blueprint of peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. Now let us look example of CSR activities with SDG under ESG as a triangular interlinked activities of sustainability. For companies with a strong CSR ethos, there seems to be a direct line between all three of these aspects of sustainability. The story you create through CSR is quantified by ESG, where you learn how you can make a real impact on your level of social responsibility and uncover the benchmark from which your strategies to improve. By aligning ESG with the areas highlighted by the UN, you also help your business make its contribution to the SDGs. These are few examples that I encountered during the evaluation of CSR activities for nearly 50 big and small entities that have been evaluated under the classification of 17 Sustainable Development Goals both in urban and rural area, and are further divided owing to the ESG criteria that makes its efforts measurable. Well, such combination helps show the true picture of the company's sustainability and then act upon it. This is a true well-tested example of interlinkage of CSR activities arbitrarily linked with the 17 SDG matrices for doing the impact assessment and later classified under ESG nomenclature. Despite of these shortcomings of ESG in India, let us see how ESG is maturing in India. ESG adoption in India is gaining momentum with the growing regulatory action, disclosure requirement, investor activism, and shifting corporate attitudes. However, ESG integration remains at an evolutionary stage. Regulatory mandate by SEBI are strengthening ESG foundation. The top 1,000 listed entities must file business responsibility and sustainability report based on the ESG parameters like emission, water use, gender policy, and board independence. Climate-related financial disclosure are also being rolled out. Mainstream institutional investors are ramping up engagement through ESG. Assets remain under 5% of total asset under management versus over 30% globally. active investor advocacy through principles like PRI, means principles of responsible investment, knowledge sharing via the sustainable stock exchange platform, and pushes for greater transparency are promising shift. Over 90% of S&P BSE 100 companies now publish sustainability reports, mostly adhering to GRI guidelines. However, standardized non-financial disclosure are yet to become mandatory. Assurance from sustainability data also remain voluntary, unlike financial statements. While larger companies have dedicated ESG teams and projects, smaller firms lag due to limitation of ESG awareness, bandwidth, and financing access. Extensive hand-holding of MSMEs will be crucial for creating an encompassing ESG ecosystem, but even today, ESG is a positive driver for future business in India. Integrated reporting combining financial and ESG parameters is gaining acceptance, led by first movers like Wipro, Hindustan Zinc, and Mahindra Finance. Adoption of global framework indicates maturing outlooks. Innovative instruments like sustainability-linked loans, green bond, and ESG-focused mutual fund are emerging to channel finance towards green sector. Technology is accelerating ESG propagation through digital tracking tools, big data, artificial intelligence, blockchains-based monitoring, and leveraging social network. In conclusion, India's ESG environment is steadily evolving through policy mandates, reporting structures, investor activism, and changing corporate attitude. While limitation persists, positive development on multiple fronts suggest a maturing Indian ESG ecosystem. Lastly, I appeal the viewers to bear with me for continuing my presentation under ESG evaluation from concept to practice. So stay tuned next week on Thursday 9 p.m. and don't forget to subscribe my channel. Till then, bye-bye.